Hey everybody, this is GGB. We didn't get any upsets, guys, yesterday. If you're wondering, this is not that I got into a fight. I did not get punched in the nose. No, I had a pimple there, and I had the very smart decision of trying to pop it and then squeeze it. And unfortunately, I gave myself kind of a mark there. So I kind of made myself look like I'm a cool kid. Got into a fight. I did not get into a fight, and I am not a cool kid. So we didn't have any upsets yesterday. So half a point for me. I was probably about as far away as possible, but luckily for me, West Virginia did not pull it out against Baylor. Let's be honest, Notre Dame didn't even come close against Duke. So, yeah. It was scary there for a second. It was scary there. We have a lot of games today, if I'm going to be honest. I'm going to try to get through them as quickly as possible, though. Let's read all the games, though, first. 5:30, we got Creighton, which is at 12-7, traveling to number 17. UConn, which is at 15-4. UConn favored with 9.5 points on FS1. At 6 o'clock, we number 10, Kansas, which is at 17-3. Traveling to number 20, Iowa State, which is at 16-5. Kansas favored with 3.5 points on ESPN. 6 o'clock, we number 13, Michigan State, which is at 16-4. Traveling to Maryland, which is at 11-10. Michigan State favored by 4.5 points on ESPN2. 6 o'clock with Texas A&M, which is at 15-6. Traveling to number 22, Tennessee, which is at 14-6. Tennessee favored by 11.5 points on SEC Network. 8 o'clock with Alabama, which is at 14-7. Traveling to number 1, Auburn, which is at 20-1. Auburn favored by 7.5 points on ESPN. 8 o'clock we also got number 23, Texas, which is at 16-5. Traveling to number 14, Texas Tech, which is at 16-5 as well. Texas Tech favored by 5.5 points on ESPN2. 8 o'clock we got number 15, Providence, which is at 18-2. Traveling to St. John's, which is at 11-8. St. John somehow favored by 2.5 points in this game. Don't ask me how. On CBS Sports Network. And at 8 o'clock, we also got Ole Miss, which is at 11-10, traveling number 25 LSU, which is at 16-5. LSU favored 14.5 points on the SEC Network. So let's start with the first one we got. We have some Big East teams playing. Right off the bat, obviously the 5:30 games, Creighton and UConn playing, but we also have a Providence St. John's game going on. So let's go over Creighton UConn real quick. Obviously, UConn sits at 6-2, third place in the conference. With a win, UConn doesn't go anywhere, but they lost, things change dramatically for those little tiny Huskies there. They have a 66% win percentage, if you're wondering. Now, Marquette, on the other hand, has won 7 out of 11 college basketball games, which is a 63%, exact same win percentage, if you're wondering. Exact same. UConn's record overall would be a little bit better than theirs, so they would have the tiebreaker, but Marquette would be in a tie for third place in the Big East with the UConn loss today. So, Marquette fan, big fan of Creighton today. Now, Creighton with a win can move to 5-4 and tie Xavier for 5th place in the Big East. So, weirdly enough, if you're Xavier, big kind of UConn fan, you don't want Creighton to catch up to you. Creighton with a loss falls to 4-5. That's not too big of a deal considering Butler's behind them, but Butler's on a 2-game winning streak. Team that's kind of come out of nowhere. Team that looked horrible to start Big East play has suddenly started giving a couple wins together. And if you're Creighton, you kind of don't want Butler slipping up on you. On the other side of things, Providence, obviously, with a loss, slips out of first place. You're going to be in 2nd place with a loss, by the way. If you're the Friars, don't lose. You're going to slip into 2nd place. Villanova is literally right on your tail. You're tied for the second longest win streak in the NFL in the Big East. Keep going at it, Providence. Obviously, with the win, they stay in first place. St. John's with a win can move to 4-5. And if you're looking at it, if Creighton also loses to UConn, so if you're a St. John's fan, obviously you're going to be rooting for your team against Providence. But you're also going to be kind of watching the Creighton-UConn game because if Creighton doesn't pull off the upset against UConn, which is the likely case scenario, right? St. John's moves to 4-5. Creighton falls to 4-5. Not only does St. John's hot Butler, but they also enter a 2-way tie with Creighton for 6th place. So big deal for St. John's considering right now they're in 8th place. So they could hop 7th place and get into tie for 6th. That's pretty amazing if you ask me. Great chance here for St. John's. With a loss here, you fall to 3-6 and you're in a tie for 8th place with Seton Hall. So, obviously, not ideal, but you don't want that. That's not perfect if you're St. John's. Don't fall into a tie with Seton Hall. Seton Hall's not playing well this year. I mean, arguably you're not either, but like St. John's, you don't want that. Don't lose. So that's the Big East for you. Moving on to the Big 12, we obviously have some pretty important matchups in here today. The Kansas-Iowa State game and Texas-Texas Tech game obviously proved very crucial in the Big 12 standings. Obviously, Kansas losing would be a huge deal because if Kansas loses, they fall to 6-2. And suddenly Baylor takes first place. Obviously, with a win, Kansas stays in first place. You're looking at it. Iowa State now sits at 3-5 in a tie for sixth place in the Big 12 with Oklahoma State. Obviously, with a win, you move out of tie for sixth place. You are just in sixth place by yourself. Iowa State is in seventh place now. Oklahoma State's in seventh place now. With a loss, which is ideal for Oklahoma State. With a loss, Oklahoma State moves into sixth place by themselves, and Iowa State falls into a tie with Oklahoma for seventh place. So, again, you're looking at it. Those are important things you're looking at for the future if you're Iowa State. Obviously, a big game today against Kansas. Also looking at it, you have a big game between Texas Tech and Texas, and this game determines third place in the Big 12. It's huge. Whoever loses this game falls to 5-4. Again, not horrible, but you're looking at it. 5-4 is a 55% win percentage. 4-3 is a 57% win percentage. Whoever loses this game falls behind TCU in the standings, is now in fifth place in the Big 12. So kind of a big deal. Whoever wins this game is in third. Whoever loses is in fifth. So it doesn't matter for TCU, honestly. If you're a TCU fan, you could not care less. Obviously, you would love tiebreakers to fall your way, so probably Texas winning would be ideal for you, considering you've beaten Texas before. But, yeah, it doesn't really matter for TCU. But that's what's at stake with the Texas Tech game. Look at the Big 10. We have that one, and you have the SEC left too. We only have one Big 10 game, but one of them it's pretty massive. So Michigan State plays today, and Michigan State wins this game. They are in the tie for first place, and it is looking like it's going to be extremely tight down the stretch. If between Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan State, I even throw Purdue in there. They are definitely in the mix, in my opinion. But Michigan State playing Maryland. Michigan State with a win moves to 8-2 into a three-way tie for first place with Wisconsin and Illinois. With a loss, you fall to 7-3, and that's obviously ideal for Wisconsin and Illinois. One time, Wisconsin and Illinois are going to be rooting for the same team, but they're going to be big fans of Maryland tonight. With a loss for Michigan State, they enter a tie for third place with Purdue. So again, Purdue probably a big fan of Maryland tonight as well. Maryland with a win moves to 4-7. Obviously going to be right behind Penn State and Iowa, a half game behind. And it's weirdly enough right now, it's a race in the Big Ten to see who's not going to be the 11th seed, right? It looks like Nebraska is definitely going to be the last seed in the conference. And I think you can assume that 12 and 13 is going to be Minnesota and Northwestern. But Maryland, Penn State, and Iowa are all locked in a matchup to see who will not get the 11th seed. Because the 11th seed is a person who has to play the first day. And as bad as Nebraska is, you don't want to have to play the first day. Because not only do you risk the chance of getting upset, you also have you're wearing out your players. So this is a big race, and if Maryland wins it, they're going to be obviously half game behind Penn State. If they lose this game, they will have a 3-8 record. And if you're looking at 3-8 record, 3-8 record, that's 3 out of 11 games. That's a 27% win percentage, if you're wondering. Now, you're looking at it, Minnesota will have won 2 out of 9, which is a 22% win percentage, so barely better. If you're Maryland, you will be barely ahead of Minnesota if you lose this game. It is tight. So if you're a Penn State, Iowa fan, would love some wiggle room here. So big fans of Michigan State tonight. If you're a Wisconsin, Illinois, or Purdue fan, or even an Ohio State fan for that matter, you're going to be pretty dang fans of Maryland today. The SEC is the last conference, and we got a lot of SEC teams going at each other. You got Texas A&M, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, and Ole Miss, LSU. So 6 different teams to go over real quick. Texas A&M obviously playing Tennessee, and Texas A&M, after starting out so hot, has lost 4 straight and suddenly sits in a tie for 6th place in the SEC, but with a win can move to 5-4, right? Would at least pass LSU. Well, actually, if LSU was to also win, you wouldn't tie. You would just be moving in the same spot. So you're looking at it. Let's start the easy one. I'm sorry. I started with a really hard one, Texas A&M. Let's talk about Auburn. Obviously, Auburn with a win, going to be in first place. Auburn with a loss, also still going to be in first place. Auburn's really easy. Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU. Let's go to Ole Miss, because Ole Miss is really easy to talk about. Ole Miss sits in second to last behind only Georgia behind them. With a win, though, can move to 3-6 and pass Missouri for third to last place. With a loss, also 2-7, still going to be ahead of Georgia in that race. So that's where we sit with Ole Miss. Now, LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama gets really complicated, right? With a win by all three, they are still going to be in a tie at 5-4. But 5-4 is a 55% win percentage, right? Now, Mississippi State sits at 4-3, which is, let me calculate, a 57% win percentage. But let's see, Mississippi State does play South Carolina tomorrow. So you're looking at that. If all four of those teams were to win. Now, I understand that's not exactly likely. LSU is favored to win, but it would be an upset win for Texas A&M and Alabama and likely South Carolina to win that matchup. But if all three win, right? Let's say if all four win, because South Carolina has to be included in there, you're screwed. Okay, so if all five were to win, they would pass Mississippi State, and Tennessee will have taken the loss to Texas A&M. They would also fall to 5-4, and Arkansas plays on Wednesday, so never mind. So that's where so if this insane scenario were to happen, if LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, and South Carolina were all to win, you would have a 5-way tie for 4th place in the SEC. That is what could happen if those things pull out today. Now, some of them are likely. If you lose, obviously you drop out of the tie, you fall to 4-5. Obviously, you're not going to pass below Florida with that, which is at 3-5. But the SEC is kind of crazy because it could really switch up. It could really switch up if certain things fall the correct way for all these different teams. You could end up seeing a 5-way tie between Tennessee, LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, and South Carolina for 4th place in the SEC, which is kind of crazy. Maybe you would see Tennessee and LSU there, and even Alabama if you were predicting it, but I don't think anyone would have expected South Carolina and Texas A&M to be in the thick of it in the SEC, and that's what could happen if certain things fall the right way today. So who does JGB think is going to win? I personally have to go with my team. I think I bet on Texas on Saturday. I'm going to bet on Texas again. I think the Longhorns have a very good basketball team. I was legitimately debating this. I think St. John's over Providence is a little bit confusing. I don't get that favoritism. But I think Alabama has a shot at beating Auburn. Alabama has a really good team just outside of the top 25 this week. I think Iowa State also has a very solid team built together, only 3.5-point underdogs. I mean, Maryland at times have shown real skill and real ability to upset teams. I mean, there's some legitimate choices here, but I think I got to go with the Longhorns. I think they're a top 25 team for a reason. Not ranked lower than Iowa State, mind you, but I don't think Texas Tech is as good of a team as Kansas is. I'm going to go with the Longhorns. Everybody, this is GGB saying adios amigos and go Longhorns.